Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome to my channel. I'm here to help teach all of you how to sew, learn some tips and tricks, and make some projects with me. If that's something that interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button because I've got a lot more projects coming your way. In this video, we are going to learn how to make the magic pillowcase. This is a great project if you're new to sewing, and it's good for both kids and adults. The best part about it is that none of your stitches are visible from the outside, so if things get a little rocky, no one's going to be able to tell. I also have a PDF of instructions in the description, so you can use that to follow along if you need a little extra help. So let's get started. Let's go over the materials that we need for this project. First, we're going to talk about our needles. So for this project, because I'm using 100% cotton fabric, I'm going to use universal needles. If I were using a t-shirt material or something really stretchy, I would use jersey needles or ballpoint needles because those are designed for that type of material. But for this project, just universal needles. I'm also going to be using a size 80-12. That's just a good middle size. At one point, we will be going through a lot of layers of fabric, so I'm just going to use it. If you're not sure what size to use, go ahead and just use 80-12. The way sizes work, the larger the size, like this 90-14, the larger the needle, so the heavier fabric. The smaller the size, like the 70-10, less fabric, smaller needle. All right, easy peasy. So universal needle, size 80-12 for this project. Next, we are going to get our thread. I'm going to be using 100% cotton thread for this project because I like matching up my type of thread with my type of fabric. You can use all-purpose polyester thread if you want. My personal preference is to not use that, but if that's what you have, go right ahead. As far as color, I'm going to be using this white, but I could also use a coordinating thread if I wanted. The thread will not be seen in this project, so it doesn't really matter, but having like a white or a gray or an off-white is just really good to have on hand. I've also got my scissors for cutting. Make sure that you are only using your fabric scissors on fabric. Do not cut paper or, God forbid, cardboard with them. Next, I'm going to get my little seam ripper. I use him for almost every project. No shame, he's my favorite little buddy. Next, we are going to need something to hold the fabric together. So traditionally, you use pins like these to keep the fabric from sliding around. I also really like using these clips. These little guys just hold the fabric really well in place and they don't put holes in the fabric. So throughout this video, you'll hear me say clip or pin interchangeably, so just use whatever you've got on hand. The last thing you need is your sewing machine with this little foot on it. So this is a J foot, it's just a zigzag foot. It is going to come standard on any type of domestic machine. Okay, so just because mine is a J foot, that's just because I have the Brother brand sewing machine. If you have another brand, it's going to have another letter or it might not be labeled at all. You're just looking for something with that space right there for the needle to move side to side. First, we are going to need our main fabric. This is going to be the body of our pillowcase. It is going to be the fabric we like the most, and it's also going to be the fabric that we have the most of. This is going to be 27 inches or 3/4 of a yard. Next, we are going to need our accent fabric. This is our smallest piece. It's just going to be a little decorative strip. This is going to be 3 inches. However, a lot of fabric stores will not cut fabric that small. Let's get you out of there. Will not cut fabric that small. So ask for an 1/8 of a yard or 1/6 of a yard or 1/4 of a yard because you can always cut it down yourself at home. And last, we need our border fabric. This is going to be the edge of the pillowcase. It's going to be what we slide the pillow in and out of, and it's going to be completely closed off. This is going to be 1/4 of a yard or 9 inches. Okay, so main fabric or body fabric, accent fabric, border fabric. I'm going to have those sizes in the description. I'm also going to have a PDF with instructions for you also in the description. So first thing we are going to do, we are going to take our accent fabric and we are going to fold it with the wrong sides together. Now the wrong side of the fabric is the ugly side. It's the side without the print. On this fabric, it's a little harder to tell the difference because it's very subtle, but trust me, in person, you can see it a bit more. When I say match raw edges together, those are the sides we've cut. You can see where they're fraying just a little bit. So all you're gonna do, fold it so those edges meet, go over to your iron and iron it so that it has a good crease. I'm gonna do that right now. All right, so I have my little accent strip ironed. Remember, just in half, hot dog style, wrong sides together, raw edges together. All right, so now we have a nice little fold here. So we're gonna go ahead and lay out our fabric. The first piece of fabric we're going to lay out is our border fabric. We're going to lay it out right side up. On a solid piece of fabric like this, it's really hard to tell what the right or the wrong side is, so don't worry about it too much. If you have a printed piece of fabric, you can really tell, so make sure you're looking at the pretty side. The next thing we are going to lay out is our main fabric. All right, so I'm going to unfold this and still putting it right side up. I'm going to match up the selvage edge of the fabric and the raw edge of the fabric all the way down. Smooth out any wrinkles I see. Then next, we're going to take our accent piece, that really thin piece from before, and we are going to once again line up the selvage edge and the raw edge. Make sure that your folded edge is facing towards you. We just want all of that to be really nice and straight. So I'm going to go ahead and pin it in place and get right back to you. Okay, now that we have it pinned, we are going to make what I like to call a fabric burrito. It's really fun. So what we're going to do, we are going to take our body fabric, our main fabric, remember that largest piece, and we are going to roll it up and over on itself, leaving behind the border fabric until it is pretty much touching the accent fabric, but we're not going all the way to the edge. We just want it sort of out of the way. Gonna keep rolling up all the way down. There's a good chunk of this pillow that goes like off camera because it's really long, so just trust me, it's there, okay? Then we are going to take our border fabric and we're going to go up and over, matching the raw edges all the way down, and make sure that you are keeping the main fabric far away. And we're going to take it and we are going to repin all of that fabric all the way down. Now it is really, really important that you don't accidentally get that body fabric where you are pinning, okay? We want it pretty far out of the way. So I'm going to keep pinning all the way down and I'll get right back to you. All right, now that we have it all rolled up and pinned, it's going to look a whole lot like this just really long tube. We are ready to go over to our sewing machine and start sewing. Okay, so now I'm at my sewing machine. I'm ready to sew. I'm going to make sure that my needle is set all the way to the left. That might be a default stitch on your sewing machine. You might have to set it. You might have a dial to actually move the needle side to side. That's gonna depend on the type of machine you have, so check your manual if you're not sure. There's a lot of tutorials for machines online, so go ahead and check those out if you're not quite sure. But I'm gonna have the needle set all the way to the left, and what I'm gonna do, I'm going to line the edge of my fabric up with the edge of the foot. That's going to help me keep it nice and straight. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew. so we have our fabric burrito all sewn all the way down. You can sort of see how long this thing is. Sorry, I just hit the little light cord there is all. What we're going to do before we turn it right side out, we're going to go down the line that we've sewn into the seam allowance here. And we're going to make sure everything was caught. And the way we do that, we're going to flip it open kind of like it's a book. We should see one border fabric, one main fabric, two accent fabrics, and then one border fabric. Go all the way down. What you're really looking out for is that there's not two of the main fabric. That'll cause a lot of problems in that next step. So if you do see two of those, unpick it and try again. All right. Now I've already checked all the way down. I know it's good, but you take time to do that. And once you do, we're going to flip it. And this is where it's kind of magical. We're going to start pulling all of the border fabric from the inside. What you're going to do, you're just going to find a weak point. Try not to really force it. We don't want to like rip our fabric. If you just kind of keep moving where you pull from, you're going to find new weak points. So just keep searching for those. And just keep on pulling. Alrighty. So we have it all pulled out. So you can see we have our border fabric, no raw edges there. Our accent fabric, nice and small right there, loose folded edge right there, and then all of our main fabric. So what we're going to do, we are going to go over to our iron, and we are going to iron everything out nice and flat. We want to make sure that the border fabric isn't folded over on the main fabric or on the accent fabric like that. We want all of those seams nice and flat and smooth. Okay, so I'm going to go iron and I'll be right back. So I have everything nice and ironed out flat, looking pretty good. Still not pillowcase shaped yet, but that's okay. We're about to get there. So we have to get rid of these selvages. So you have a choice here. You can get a straight edge, draw a line, and cut all the way down and just cut all of that selvage off. We do not want to include it. We can do an extra wide seam allowance and cut it off after we sew. It's up to you, but we need that selvage gone. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and cut mine off. I don't want to deal with it. And I really recommend you do that as well, but you don't have to. Okay? So I'm going to cut it and be right back. All right, so now we have the selvage edges cut off. Now everything we have is a raw edge except for this top bit here. And we are going to make a French seam. A French seam is cool because it's going to keep these raw edges hidden inside the seam allowance. And it's going to look really, really professional. It's going to keep everything from fraying and keep your pillow looking good for a long time. Now, if you have sewn before, this is going to feel a little backwards because we're going to make the seam backwards from how we usually do. We're going to take our pillowcase and we are going to match the raw edges, but we're going to put the wrong sides together. Traditionally, you put the right sides together when you're making a seam. For a French seam, it's backwards. For a really professional finish, I recommend trying to match up the accent fabric and the border fabric as best you can so that there's not a huge difference. It's okay if that doesn't work out, but pay special attention right there. And you're going to pin all the way down the long side of your pillowcase and on the bottom edge. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, so we have everything all clipped or pinned together. So now we're going to go back to our sewing machine and keeping the needle in the same position from before, we are going to sew all the way down the long edge of our fabric and the short edge. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and be right back. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind with this one that's a really important step, we're going to backstitch at the beginning and the end of each of these seams. A back stitch is just when your machine goes backwards for a couple of stitches to reinforce the stitch. On your machine, there should be a button or a lever that you're going to press and hold to make it go backwards. Again, if you don't know where to find that, check your manual, okay? All right, so we have that seam allowance done. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to get our scissors and we are going to trim this seam allowance down so that it's about 1/4 of an inch away from the stitch. All right, so we're going to get our scissors and go ahead and do that. All right, now that we have that all cut, we are going to go over to the iron and we're actually going to fold that seam allowance over and iron it down flat so that the stitches are on the very edge. If you want to skip this step, you can, but you're going to have a much easier time on the next step if you take the time to iron this, okay? So I'm going to do that and be right back. All right, once we have it ironed with that seam allowance just folded over, we're going to take our pillowcase and we are going to turn it inside out. We're going to go back to the iron and then we are going to iron it out flat so there aren't any extra folds or anything like that. We want everything to be nice and smooth. All right, then once we have it all flipped inside out and ready to go, we are going to sew the same lines we did before all the way down the long edge and one short end, and then our pillow is going to be done. We're not going to change the needle position, same seam allowance, same everything. Remember to backstitch at the beginning and end. And now you've got a pillowcase. I am so proud of all of you, and I hope you're proud of yourselves too. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer them. If you like what you saw, make sure to like and subscribe because I've got even more sewing tutorials coming your way. Again, I am so proud of you, and I will see you next time. Bye. All right. So, you might have heard me say dang it earlier. And that's because I'll be transparent with you. I don't always get everything right all the time because I talked about my seam ripper. See how it's really nice and straight until all of a sudden I realized that at the bottom it got way, way off. That doesn't really matter, all things considered, in this project. So if that happens to you and you don't want to worry about it, don't worry about it. This is a quick project, an easy project. This is a learning experience, right? This is also why I prefer clips. This doesn't happen as much with clips as they do pins. But I'm going to get my seam ripper and I'm going to take this out just to where it started getting off, which is a good chunk of the pillow. And I am going to try again. Remember, you can always try again unless you're cutting. You can always take stitches out and just give it another go. Cutting is permanent, sewing can be temporary. So I will go ahead and do that. So, fun trick with seam rippers that I just now realized I should tell you, you don't have to pick each of these out one by one. A little ball point there, that'll help keep it from piercing through the fabric, and you can just sort of slide it in between. It's a lot quicker and a lot less painful. Just be careful. If it's not going smooth, just try and readjust it.